Okay, here's chapter 2 of Klee Wyck by Emily Carr, and the chapter is called Tanoo. Jimmy had a good boat. He and his wife, Louisa, agreed to take me to the old villages of Tanoo, Skadans, and Kumshawa on the southern island of the Queen Charlotte group. We were to start off at the Indians' usual 8 o'clock and got off at the usual near noon. The missionary had asked me to take his pretty daughter along. We chugged and bobbed over all sorts of water and came to Tanoo in the evening. It looked very solemn as we came nearer. Quite far out from land, Jimmy shut off the engine and plopped the anchor into the sea. Then he shoved the canoe overboard and, putting my sheepdog and me into it, nosed it gently through the kelp. The grating of our canoe on the pebbles warned the silence that we were coming to break it. The dog and I jumped out, and Jimmy and the canoe went back for the others. It was so still and solemn on the beach, it would have seemed irreverent to speak aloud. It was as if everything were waiting and holding its breath. The dog felt it too. He stood with cocked ears, trembling. When the others came and moved about and spoke, this feeling went away. At one side of the Tanoo beach rose a big bluff, black now that the sun was behind it. It is said that the bluff is haunted. At its foot was the skeleton of a house. All that was left of it was the great beams and the corner posts and 2 carved poles, one at each end of it. Inside, where the people used to live, was stuffed with elderberry bushes, scrub trees, and fireweed. In that part of the village, no other houses were left, but there were lots of totem poles sticking up. A tall, slender one belonged to Louisa's grandmother. It had a story carved on it. Louisa told it to us in a loose sort of way, as if she had half forgotten it. On the base of this pole was the figure of a man. He had on a tall, tall hat, which was made up of sections, and was a hat of great honor. On the top of the hat perched a raven. Little figures of men were clinging to every ring of honor all the way up the hat. The story told that the man had adopted a raven as his son. The raven turned out to be a wicked trickster and brought a flood upon his foster parents. When the waters rose, the man's nephews and relations climbed up the rings of his hat of honor and were thus saved from being drowned. It was a fine pole, bleached of all color, and then bloomed over again with green-yellow mold. The feelings Jimmy and Louisa had in this old village of their own people must have been quite different from ours. They must have made my curiosity seem small. Often, Jimmy and Louisa went off hand in hand by themselves for a little talking in Indian as they went. A nose of land ran out into the sea from Tanoo and split the village into 2 parts. The parts diverged at a slight angle so that the village of Tanoo had a wall-eyed stare out over the sea. Beyond the little point, there were 3 fine house fronts. A tall totem pole stood up against each house, in the center of its front. When Jimmy cut away the growth around the foot of them, the paint on the poles was quite bright. The lowest figure of the center pole was a great eagle. The other 2 were beavers with immense teeth. They held sticks in their hands. All 3 base figures had a hole through the pole so that people could enter and leave the house through the totem. On our first night in solemn Tanoo was very strange indeed. When we saw the Indians carrying the little canoe down to the water, we said, "What are you going out to the boat for?" "We are going to sleep out there." "You are going to leave us alone in Tanoo?" "You can call if anything is wrong," they said. But we knew the boat was too far beyond the kelp beds for them to hear us. The canoe glided out, and then there was nothing but wide black space. We 2 girls shivered. I wanted the tent flaps open. It did not seem quite so bad to me if I could feel the trees close. Very early in the morning, I got to work. The boat lay far out with no sign of life on her. The Indians did not come ashore. It got late, and we wanted breakfast. We called and called, but there was no answer. Do you remember what they said about those Indians being asphyxiated by the fumes from their engine while they slept? I was thinking of that too. We ran out on the point as far as we could so as to get nearer to the boat, and we called and called both together. There was a horrible feeling down inside us that neither of us cared to speak about. After a long while, a black head popped up in the boat. "You must not leave us again like that," we told Jimmy and Louisa. I met them coming over the sand, Louisa hurrying ahead to get supper. Away back, I saw Jimmy carrying something dreadful with long arms trailing behind in the sand. It was a round body speared by the stick on Jimmy's shoulder. "We took the missionary's daughter hunting devilfish," chuckled Louisa as she passed me. We ate some of the devilfish for supper, fried in pieces like sausage. It was sweet like chicken, but not very tough. The devilfish were in the puddles around the rocks at low tide. When they saw people come, they threw their tentacles around the rocks and stuck their heads into the rocky creases. The only way to make them let go was to beat their heads in when you got the chance. It was long past dinner time. Louisa could not cook because there was no water in camp. That was Jimmy's job. The spring was back in the woods, nobody but Jimmy knew where, and he was far out at sea, tinkering in his boat. Louisa called and called. Jimmy heard because his head popped up, but he would not come. Every time she called the same two Indian words. "Make it hotter, Louisa. I want to get back to work." She called the same two words again. "Are those words swears?" "No, if I swore, I would have to use English words." "Why?" "There are no swears in Haida." "What do you say if you get angry or want to insult anybody?" "You would say, 'Your father or your mother was a slave,' but I could not say that to Jimmy." "Well, say something hot. I want dinner." She called the same two words again, but her voice was different this time. Jimmy came. Pictures of all the poles were in my sketch sack. I strapped it up and said, "That's that." Then we went away from Tanoo and left the silence to heal itself, left the totem poles staring out over the sea. Almost immediately we were in rough water. Jimmy spread a sail in the bottom of the boat, and we women all lay flat. Nobody spoke, only groans. When the boat pitched, all our bodies rolled one way and then rolled back. Under the sail where I was lying, something seemed very slithery. "Jimmy, what is under me?" "Only the devilfish we are taking home to Mother. She likes them very much." "Ugh," I said. Seasickness on top of devilfish seemed too much. Jimmy said, "They're dead. It won't hurt them when you roll over."